upward route. A woman sat in gold and purple sheets, armed with the trident and the thunderbolt, her feet upon a couch of cloud back.
opposites. So we've read the first of those, the Madonna, or the Mother of the Seven Sorrows, who said, "O Savitri, I am thy secret soul. To share the suffering of the world I came. I draw my children's pangs into my breast. I am the nurse of the dolor beneath the stars. I am the soul of all who wailing writhe under the ruthless harrow of the gods. I am woman, nurse, and slave, and eaten beast. I tend the hands that gave me cruel blows, the hearts that spurned my love and zeal I serve. I am the courted queen, the pampered doll. I am the giver of the bowl of rice. I am the worshipped angel of the house. I am in all that suffers and that cries. Mine is the prayer that climbs in vain from earth. I am traversed by my creature's agonies. I am the spirit in a world of pain." So she continues, and then on page 505, or roar, angry beast, the beast that crouching growls within man's depths, voice of a tortured titan, once a god. I am the man of sorrows. I am he who is nailed on the wide cross of the universe. To enjoy my agony, God built the earth. My passion he has made his drama's theme. He has sent me naked into his bitter world, and beaten me with his rods of grief and pain, that I might cry and grovel at his feet, and offer him worship with my blood and tears. And then Savitri, after listening to these two beings, and Savitri heard the voice, the echo heard, and turning to her being of pity, spoke, "Madonna of suffering, mother of grief divine, thou art a portion of my soul put forth to bear the unbearable sorrow of the world. And Savitri will encounter the next Madonna, the next power of her soul. So, Arkham?
I'm sorry, where are we starting?
We're at the break on page 508.
On past.
At the break, so third line from the top.
On past, she in her spirit's upward route, an ardent grandeur clean mid ferns and rocks. A quiet wind flattered the heart of two worlds. A finer perfume breathed from slender trees. A beautiful groove, subtle and high and strange. Here, on a boulder carved like a huge throne, woman sat in golden purple sheen, armed with the trident and the thunderbolt, her feet upon couchant lion's back. A formidable smile covered from her lips, heaven-fire laughter in the corners of her eyes, her body mass of courage and heavenly strength. She minced the triumph of the nether gods. A halo of lightnings flamed around her head, and sovereignty, a great status zoned her robe, and majesty and victory sat with her, guarding in the wide cosmic battlefield against the flat equality of death and the all-leveling insurgent night, the hierarchy of the ordered powers, the high changeless values, the peaked eminence, the privileged aristocracy of truth, and in the governing ideal's sun, the triumvirate of wisdom, love, and bliss, and the sole autocracy of absolute light.
Thank you. So we pause for a few moments.
But she has a purpose, she kind of, you have an explanation about that?
Well, no, but I think this goddess is typically attired in that, in those colors.
Is it kind of transformation or?
I don't know. These are colors associated, I think, with this goddess.
Purple was the color of kings and empires because it was so valuable. So maybe it's showing the might.
It's a royalty symbol.
Right, it's a symbol of royalty. But gold, symbol of what?
Gold symbolizes spiritual power.
Supernatural power.
Yeah. But what's interesting is when Sri Aurobindo explains the mother, when he writes in the mother, the four aspects of the mother, here it seems he fleshes it out, giving also the shadow side of the mother. Because unless we embrace the mother, the raw human side, as well as this spiritualized ideal side, you miss the whole point. So it's only here, at least I feel, where we really get a picture of the mother, which is the soul.
But this shadow side is kind of a perversion or of the divine qualities.
Exactly right. But see, unless we acknowledge that, you see, then we're lost.
Right.
Because we stay in the spiritual bypass.
Right.
But here we get to, this is us. He's talking to us. So every human has this.
So we carry both.
Yeah, we carry these mothers inside.
And these perversions.
And the perversions. But unless we acknowledge the perversions, we don't get there.
Yeah. So we see, in the look of this goddess, this power and strength, this kind of royalty, as you say, with this purple color, is symbolized. He says, and sovereignty, a great cestus. A cestus is kind of a belt that was worn by the ancient Greek royalty, I believe. Zoned her robe, and majesty and victory sat with her, guarding the wide cosmic battlefield against the flat equality of death. Death levels everyone to the same standard. And the all-leveling insurgent night. So she's guarding the hierarchy of the ordered powers, the high, changeless values, the peaked eminences, the privileged aristocracy of truth. And in the governings, ideal sun, the triumvirate of wisdom, love, and bliss, and the sole autocracy of the absolute light. So we see often he's repeating these words of royalty in describing her.
I also recognize in the first lines that the nature is described in a very subtle and sensitive, quiet and fine words. An ardent winter climb with ferns and rocks, the quiet wind flattered the harmful waters, the finer brisk from slender trees, all beautiful blue, subtle and high and strange. That is she in this surrounding.
That's right, that's the kind of environment in which she's seated. So there's kind of a divinity in that atmosphere around her. So here he's still, the narrator is describing her and her scene as Savitri encounters her. Let's continue.
August on her seat in the inner world of mind, the mother of mind looked down on passing things, listened to the advancing tread of time, saw the irresistible beating of the suns, and heard the thunder of the march of God. Amid the swaying forces in their strife, sovereign was her word of luminous command. Her speech like a war cry rang from a pilgrim chant. A charm, restoring hope in failing hearts, aspired the harmony of her prisoned voice. O Savitri, I am thy secret soul. I have come down into the human world, and the movement watched by an unsleeping eye, and the dark contrariety of earth's fate, and the battle of the bright and somber powers. I stand upon earth's path of danger and grief, and help the unfortunate and save the doomed. To the strong I bring the guerdon of their strength. To the weak I bring the armor of my force. To men who long I carry their coveted joy. I am fortunate, justifying the great and wise, by the sanction of the plaudits of the crowd, then trampling them with the iron heel of fate.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. It's interesting that Sri Aurobindo locates her in this first line in an inner world of mind, rather than in the psychic realm per se, but perhaps a realm very close to the psychic.
She's the mother of strength, maybe.
Yes, he calls her the mother of might. And in these first lines, he stresses this movement of time. She looked down on passing things, listened to the advancing tread of time, and saw the irresistible wheeling of the suns, and heard the thunder and the march of God. And she's looking at this movement, this evolutionary movement through time, and she's helping in that movement, perhaps even helping to turn the wheels of time and advance in this evolutionary progression, which is necessarily associated with conflict, death, and destruction, in order that the new may be created.
But you see how he balances it with it's the war cry and the pilgrim chant at the same time. So that's our life. We've got both things happening.
I also remember that the mother of mine, then in the book 3, the expression and aspiration to the Divine Mother is that the might of all that never yet came down. And it's a description of the Divine Mother. So,
She's bringing down the future in a way, or the force of the future. But her speech like a war cry, so, I mean, she is also behind the battle and the wars. So Sri Aurobindo doesn't just look at them in a negative way, but also as a kind of a help or a movement in the progression of evolution. The evolution of societies moving towards a more just, a more balanced, a more true kind of government and reign of power. So the tyrants must be thrown out and new tyrants put in their place. But also she brings this charm, restoring hope in failing hearts. And again, she says, I have come down into the human world and the movement, watched by an unsleeping eye, and the dark contrariety of earth's fate, and the battle of the bright and somber powers. I stand upon the earth's paths of danger and grief, and help the unfortunate and save the doomed. To the strong I bring the burden of their strength. This burden is reward or recompense.
Say honor.
Excuse me?
What did you say? The meaning?
This burden, reward.
Reward.
Or recompense. Wages. To the weak I bring the armor of my force. To men who long I carry their coveted joy. their desired joy. I am fortune, justifying the great and wise by the sanction of the plaudits of the crowd. Plaudits are enthusiastic expressions of praise, then trampling them with the armed heel of fate. So we see our leaders praised, applauded. She lifts them up and brings them down, tramples them with the armed heel of fate. See that?
My ear is learning to the cry of the oppressed. I topple down the thrones of telling things. A cry comes down, proscribed and hunted lives, appealing to me against a pitiless world, a voice of the forsaken and desolate, and the lone prisoners in his dungeon cell. Men hate in my coming the Almighty's force, or praise with thankful tears His Saviour is. I smite the Titan who bestrides the world, and slay and horse in his blood-stained train. I am Durga, the goddess of the proud and strong, and Lakshmi, Queen of the fair and fortunate. I wear the face of Kali when I kill. I trample the carcass of the demon hordes. I am charged by God to do His mighty work. Uncaring, I serve His will who sent me forth, reckless of peril and earthly consequence. I resent not of virtue and of sin, but do the deed He has put into my heart.
Thank you. She is the destroyer, but she destroys the evil in the world. She destroys what is holding back its progress. And she also, and I think Sri Aurobindo describes her this way in The Mother of Mahakali, that she is also the most compassionate. And here he says, my ear is lean to the cry of the oppressed. And then I topple down the thrones of tyrant kings, and a cry comes from proscribed and hunted lives. Proscribed are those who are excluded. Appealing to me against a pitiless world, a voice of the forsaken and desolate, and the lone prisoner in his dungeon cell. I think there are several times in Savitri where Sri Aurobindo refers to the prisoner in his cell, which he too experienced for a time in solitary confinement. Men hail in my coming the Almighty's force, or praise with thankful tears his Savior grace. And then again, I smite the Titan who bestrides the world and slay the ogre in his blood-stained den. This ogre is a mythological giant or monster in legends that eat humans. I am Durga, goddess of the proud and strong. And I think it's Durga who is associated with these colors of purple and gold. And Lakshmi, queen of the fair and fortunate. I wear the face of Kali when I kill. Kali's face typically is represented in a kind of terrible form, blood dripping down her face. I trample the corpses of the demon hordes. I am charged by God to do his mighty work. Uncaring, I serve his will who sent me forth, reckless of peril and earthly consequence. I reason not of virtue and of sin, but do the deed he has put into my heart.
These last two lines are interesting because of the various literature or saying that has to follow the inner guidance by the mind.
Right.
On both sides.
He sometimes speaks of these as, kind of human constructions, and also they both kind of carry the other implied within it. So virtue kind of implies sin also. And sin implies virtue.
Don't you think it's unusual in a sense that he throws Lakshmi in the middle of all this Kali and Durga?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Because I think that's an important thing, because I tend to put things in categories or boxes, you see, but this reality is very mixed, and so you can't just say this is just Kali or this is just Lakshmi. No, it's something else.
Yeah, that's a good point, that it's this insertion of Lakshmi between Durga and Kali. That the mother kind of uses all of these different aspects interchangeably as needed.
Right. But it's in this particular context of this particular mother and not the previous mother of sorrows.
Yeah.
You see, it's It's all flowing.
Very, I like to know that this Canto, the triple source forces, he describes name of the female gods. There is no male god in source forces.
I'm sorry.
He describes name of the female gods.
Female powers.
Source force cannot represent male gods. There are so many gods in male gods also there.
Yeah, these seem to be powers of the mother.
Oh, that is the.
These are powers of Savitri's soul. Savitri represents as an incarnation of the mother. But the males do come in as these shadows. Each of them are male, interestingly.
I think it's because the mind is often expressed as a mind.
So let's continue. Margaret.
I fear not for the angry throne of heaven. I flinch not from the red and sound of heaven. I crush the opposition of the gods, tread down a million goblin obstacles. I guide men to the paths of the divine, and guard him from the red wolf and the snake. I set in his mortal hand my heavenly sword, and put on him the breastplate of the gods. I break the ignorant pride of human mind, and lead the sword to the likeness of the truth. I rend man's narrow and successful life, and force his sorrowful eyes to gaze at the sun, that he may die to earth and live in his soul. I know the goal, I know the secret route. I have studied the map of the invisible birds. I am the battle's head, the journey's star. But the great obstinate world resists my word, and the crookedness and evil in man's heart is stronger than reason, profounder than the wit, and the malignancy of hostile powers puts craftily back the clock of destiny, and mightier seas than the eternal will.
Thank you.
I have 2 points to add before we move forward. First of all, I would like to understand from me. Okay. So I have 2 points to discuss before we move forward. The first discussion would be with me. What made you feel that putting Lakshmi here with Durga and Kali is not appropriate? Because Lakshmi is somewhere associated with wealth and prosperity.
No, I didn't say it's not appropriate. I said it's good. Because these things are mixed. We tend to separate them. That's all I'm saying.
Durga and Kali is also there.
I know. We all have all of it.
Yeah. So we have 4 forms of mother, as they say, which is from the philosophy. So 3 of them are mentioned there. What could we also say is that why not the fourth one is there? Saraswati.
So I'm not sure, are you saying that it seems inappropriate?
No, it's okay.
It's okay.
I mean, I could also say why not Saraswati is there.
But I think she is here in a way, see, because these, I would call this Sri Aurobindo's approach here non-dualistic, but he gives it in dualistic terms so we understand it. So he shoots down heaven and hell, in those first ones. So he's not worried about heaven, which is the divine, and he's not flinching from hell, which is the opposites. So he's above that. And then we have all these different parts of the being. So in this kind of map that he's laying out, we see the parts of our being and these different powers that we have exemplified in Savitri. So she's moving through them, but we never want to get stuck at any one place. Because some people will open this book, they'll read about the mother of sorrows, and they think that that's it. But that's not it. And then we have the next one. So it's going back to the concept of integral yoga. Body, mind, and spirit. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, and I'm glad that he uses it all, because that's where our life is, very mixed. But it's non-dualistic also. So we don't separate ourselves from others and all the rest, or from nature, or all of that.
Yeah, Sri Aurobindo is always describing all the many different facets of the divine and of our world, while at the same time he puts it all on a foundation kind of oneness. But he doesn't shrink away from that diversity and the different oppositions that are there and played out in the world. You have a second question?
To finish the first one, since I haven't read everything and I don't know everything, I would ask you to maybe contemplate why the positioning of Lakshmi got a question, but not with Durga and Kali, perhaps somewhere in your own contemplation. The next thing is for this beautiful person who mentioned like why male gods are not mentioned. So perhaps in my experience and knowledge, God is neither masculine nor feminine. It is we humans who have genders. God is every only present. So we look for a male figure, female figure, but it's just one light, and light has no gender. Perhaps this is mother also. So that is from my end. Thank you.
I just will add it to our first question. I just will add it to our first question. It is easy to understand. We have different moods, you know. Sometimes very anger, sometimes very compassionate, but we are the same person. So like I have mixed of all mothers, Durga, Kali. You can compare it with us. When we are very terrible, fight and mood, like the Durga is expression, compassion, Lakshmi is expression. So we all together is there. It is not separate, but it is all together also. Did you clear it?
Okay, so this aspect of the mother of the soul is particularly associated with this battle. I crush the opposition of the gods, tread down 1,000,000 goblin obstacles. I guide man to the path of the divine and guard him from the red wolf and the snake. So I'm not sure about these images. I think also this red wolf comes in the Vedas, I believe. But we can kind of imagine that it's kind of, this kind of terrible threat of death, of tearing apart, and the snake, which is somewhat more covert, and we can't see its danger, which is lurking in the trees or around us. So she sets in his mortal hand my heavenly sword and put on him the breastplate of the gods. She gives us courage and fortitude to fight against the obstacles that hold back our souls. And at the same time, she breaks the ignorant pride of human mind. She cuts down our limiting tendencies, our constructions, which are narrow and may serve a purpose in time, but eventually need to be exceeded, whether that's on the individual level or on a social level, whether it's our idea of ourselves, of our identity, which helps us get through a particular phase of our life, or it's a government, or a kingdom, which is limited in its own way, but provides a degree of safety and maybe prosperity for a period of time in the social development. But all of that narrowness that eventually needs to be brought down again and destroyed. So I rend man's narrow and successful life and force his sorrowful eyes to gaze at the sun, that he may die to earth and live in his soul. These constructions tie us down to the earth, to our limitations. So they must be destroyed at times so that we may look up beyond them to something eternal, to something infinite.
Design reforms also inclusive leads the thought to the wideness of the truth. That is also what we needed daily, providing the view when problems are coming down.
Yeah, one of the most characteristic ways of our self-limitations is with our thought.
Widening the truth and to see all points.
Yeah, we live in our conceptions of things, our ideas about the way that reality is, our world is. And we see this kind of played out now in the world with all these kind of conflicting viewpoints. We see how kind of limiting they are. For every idea, there is an opposite idea. For every point of view, there's an opposite point of view.
These images that he's using are very very interesting, you know, the wolf and the snake and all these things. But then he gets into this biblical language, you know, the breastplate of the gods. And he ends here with my word, and word capitalized. So that's Revelation. So this particular mother is giving a revelation, but it's resisted because of the crookedness and the evil. But this is not the last word. See, we have revelation to guide us on the way. She's saying we have all this. Then we'll see what happens now.
Yeah, she admits her own limitations here. That the great obstinate world resists my word, and the crookedness and evil in man's heart is stronger than reason, profounder than the pit, and the malignancy of hostile powers puts craftily back the clock of destiny, and mightier seems than the eternal will. And she'll continue.
What is pit meaning?
Well, we might say hell. I mean, it's a pit is something dug into the ground, but here it's capitalized. So she can help, but her help is limited. Let's continue. Would you like to read? Okay, Mr. B.
Okay. The cosmic evil is too deep to unroot. The cosmic suffering is too vast to heal. A few I guide who pass me towards the light. A few I save, the mass falls back unsaved. A few I help, the many strive and fail. But my heart I have hardened, and I do my work. Slowly the light grows greater in the east. Slowly the world progresses on God's road. His seal is on my task, it cannot fail. I shall hear the silver swing of heaven's gates, when God comes out to meet the soul of the world. She spoke, and from the lower human world an answer, a warped echo met her speech. The voice came through the spaces of the mind of the dwarf titan, the deformed, chained God who strives to master his nature's rebel stuff and make the universe his instrument. The ego of this great world of desire claimed earth and the wide heavens for the use of man. Head of life, it shapes on earth. Head of the life it shapes on earth. Its representatives and conscious soul and symbol of evolving light and force and vessel of the Godhead that must be.
Thank you. So first we have a continuation of this same idea of the limitation of this Godhead, that she cannot unroot this cosmic evil, that it's too deep, and the cosmic suffering is too vast to heal. But she says, the few I guide who pass me towards the light, the few I save, the mass falls back unsaved. The few I help, the many strive and fail. But she does her work undeterred, and slowly the light grows. Slowly the world progresses on God's road. And she says, His seal is on my task. I cannot fail. And she assures, I shall hear the silver swing of heaven's gate when God comes out to meet the soul of the world. So she has this faith that upholds her in her work to help the oppressed, to bring down the tyrants and the evil. And then we're introduced to the Echo, the dwarf titan, the deformed, chained god who strives to master his nature's rebel stuff and make the universe his instrument. The ego of this great world of desire. Margaret?
I have for me touching this light, but my heart I have hardened and in my world. There is also something which all the human beings experience. We can be very compassionate and supportive and loving and understanding, and then and it is the question is for me is this power of this Madonna of strength and in a way truth also we forgot has its effect on the heart of the world. So that's true because that's what a human experience.
Yeah, this hardening of the heart. Sometimes we may need to harden our heart sometimes, or this power of the soul does, when it has to destroy something that's standing in the way of progress. We can't always be soft and compassionate. We also need this strength that's willing to destroy something that needs to be taken down, a limitation.
But that's a very tricky point.
Sometimes we need to be severe, though. Mother says sometimes the severity is necessary in order to move man's kind of obstinacy in his ignorant ways. But they say, it's better to be severe with oneself rather than with others.
Then even more for me comes also how this hardening somehow goes together with the ego, with the very looking down in
I mean, in the context in which this is coming, it's more like she sees her limitation. She sees she can't help everyone. But she goes forward anyway, even though she recognizes, okay, I can't save everyone, I can't help everyone, but yet, she persists. She hardens her heart so that she doesn't give up. She continues in her work because she knows this work comes from God. But the description of the echo is interesting because it represents this force in the world and force in us who strives to master his nature's rebel stuff. So we have this, we have this limited ego within us which is trying to master our nature. And in the world, this ego is there that strives to master nature and feels somehow superior to nature, feels it has the right to do this. But again, its power is limited. Claimed earth and the wide heavens for the use of man. Head of the life it shapes on earth, its representative and conscious soul. He's speaking of mankind. And symbol of evolving light and force, and vessel of the Godhead that must be. Speaking of mankind.
That force comes through the mind, and that's what's the interesting part. This is the mental ego figuring out how we're going to run the world.
Right. And again, maybe in that context it bears repeating that Madonna of might also came from an inner world of mind. So he too the voice came through the spaces of the mind, of the dwarf Titan, the deformed chained God. So these are forces coming through the mind. Let's continue. A thinking animal. About 6-7 lines
A
down.
thinking animal, nature's struggling God, has made of her his nurse and tool and slave, and pays to her as wage and emolument inescapably by a deep law in things. His heart's grief and his body's death and pain. His pains are her means to grow, to see and feel. His death assists her immortality, a tool and slave of his own slave and tool. He praises his free will and his master mind, and pushed by her upon her chosen paths. Possessor he possessed and ruler he ruled. Possessor he possessed and ruler ruled. Her conscious automaton, her desires do. His soul in her guest and sovereign mute inert. His body her robot. His life her way to live. His conscious mind a strong revolted self. The voice goes up and smooths some inner sun.
Thank you. Let's pause.
Who is meant by he made of her? Who is meant?
Okay, just 1 minute and then I'll respond. So again, he was describing mankind. But in a sense, he was describing this ego, but representative of that ego of this mental ego is mankind. It's representative and conscious soul, and symbol of the evolving light and force and vessel of the Godhead that must be. So he continues, a thinking animal, that's mankind. Nature's struggling Lord. He's struggling, mankind is struggling to master nature, to become Lord of nature. And he's made of her, nature, his nurse and tool and slave. But he pays to her as wage and emolument, that's compensation for his work. Inescapably, he must pay by a deep law on things, his heart's grief and his body's death and pain. And we'll see why. His pains are her means to grow, to see and feel. So again, his pain, mankind's, this egoistic being within her, are her means to grow, nature's means to grow. And we'll see, he tries to master nature, but he is also a tool of nature. He is a representative, a being of nature. His pains are her means to grow, to see and feel. His death assists her immortality. A tool and slave of his own slave and tool. He tries to master nature, make it his slave and tool, but he is a tool and slave of her. He praises his free will and his master mind. It says, but could put but, is pushed by her upon her chosen paths. Possessor, he is possessed. And ruler, rule. He tries to rule her, but she rules him still. Her conscious automaton. That's like a robot. Her desires dupe. His soul is her guest. A sovereign, but a sovereign who's mute, inert, Her body, his body, her robot, his life, her way to live. His conscious mind, her strong, revolted serf. Serf is servant. His conscious mind is her strong, revolted servant. He's striving, he's revolting and trying to master her. The voice rose up and smote some in her son. So this is the introduction to this echo of the Madonna of Might. And there we have to pause for today. Serf is servant. Or serf is kind of an underclass of society, which in effect are laborers and servants of the higher classes. Okay, we stop there for today. Play some music. That's voice. Thank you, Mother. A woman sat in gold and purple sheets, armed with the trident and the thunderbolt. Her feet upon a glassy glass deck. thanks to Share Video.